Hello, welcome back to the show. Fantastic having your company today. And Dawn has Tommy the tortoise. There you go. Hi, Tommy. How you doing? Nice to have your company, my friend. Right, now let's talk about Britain's workforce, because apparently it's going to shrink to a record low. Yeah, people like me toiling every day to pay our taxes so other people can sit at home under their slankets. Because people are basically too sick to work, or so they say. Let's speak to Chris Snowdon, Head of Lifestyle Economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs. We have a problem, don't we? It's not just work shyness, it's just fecklessness and laziness. And it seems to me the Labour government want to reward that even more.
I think that's a little bit unfair. There's bound to be a bit of fecklessness and scrounging in the system. It's quite easy to game, for sure. But there's also a lot of people who genuinely would like to get back to work but find themselves in a benefits trap. And I think most people who've looked at this issue seriously can see that the rise in people on incapacity benefit and other out-of-work benefits is not really reflective of a genuine sudden increase in the last 3 or 4 years in people being very ill. It's come about because of changes to the benefit system. And the benefit system at the moment, if you claim sickness, you get a lot more money than if you just claim normal unemployment benefit. If you claim long-term sickness, you do claim significantly more, not as much as if you were working, but not far off what you would be earning on minimum wage. And so you have people in this trap by which if they start working again, whether it's part-time or full-time, they're either going to make only a very small amount more than they get on benefits, or they're actually going to lose money. And so although it's in their long-term interest to get back to work because they're never going to reach their earning potential set around on benefits, in the short term, they're paying a price for it. And so the benefit system is broken. It often is. It often needs reforming. There's always problems with it. And you see it over a number of decades in Britain and in other countries. When you change the system, when you change the incentives, you'll see more or fewer people on different types of benefits.
What's the solution here then? Is it actually cutting those benefits to sort of force people to go and get jobs because all of a sudden they can't sort of maintain any form of lifestyle, or is that too cruel?
Well, it's cruel on the people who are genuinely incapacitated, of course. And, you know, there's not a trivial number of people like that. So this is a problem you always have with disability benefit reform, is that you don't want to punish people who genuinely cannot work and need to be given a decent standard of living. But at the same time, you don't want to create these perverse incentives so that people who either there's not very much wrong with them, or there used to be something wrong with them, but now they're stuck in the poverty trap. You know, that's the issue, and it's not easy. This is really what universal credit was supposed to deal with. It was supposed to sort of taper off as people went into work, but it's not working. I'm not saying there's an easy solution to this, but we do understand. I think most people who look at the system do understand what the problem is, and therefore we should be able to find some kind of solution. It's got nothing to do with long COVID or obesity or these other things that people talk about.
In theory, 6.6% of the working age population is inactive due to ill health. And I think I read somewhere actually that the vast majority, not vast majority, but a huge number of these people are in younger age demographics, and they're off with things such as anxiety. What on earth's going on there?
Well, again, it will be a combination of people gaming the system and people being genuinely sick and kind of caught in these benefits for longer than they really should be. There certainly has been a big increase in the number of people claiming incapacity benefit for things like anxiety and stress and depression. These problems, of course, are very difficult to kind of clinically prove. GPs are fairly sanguine about signing huge numbers of people off sick. There's no incentive for them not to do so. So yeah, if you're wanting to game the system, it's quite easy to claim that you have things like anxiety and depression, but of course some people genuinely do. The thing is, if you've got anxiety and particularly depression, being off work for a very long period of time is hardly going to be the answer to that. In fact, quite the opposite. It would be better if these people could get back into work, but as I say, the financial incentives are not always there for that.
So what is the solution? If you could wave a magic wand and make some sort of, you know, big, rapid policy changes, what are we looking at here? Is it things like getting rid of all of this inward migration in the hope that wages would then go up? Is that sort of putting up the minimum wage again, even though employers say we can't afford that? Is it cutting sickness benefits? Is it actually removing from the orbit of, you know, the things you can claim, things such as mental health conditions like anxiety and depression?
Well, there's a lot of options you've given there. Look, I think that there's two things, really. I think one is that the government needs to do really what David Cameron and George Osborne did about 10 years ago, and that's to have a rather more stringent checks on people's disability. We need to look at the incentives for doctors and other medics to sign people off. At the moment, there's really no reason why they should ask too many questions about it. So in one sense, we need to get a bit stricter with people, because there's undoubtedly people out there who are gaming the system. And the other thing is to kind of deal with this cliff edge financially, in which if you come off long-term sick and go into work, if you're losing money, obviously it's not a very tempting proposition. So what we need to do, I think, is to see these benefits taper away rather than disappear altogether as you go into work.
And there are people who sort of suggest that when it comes to what might be going on, in part, is one of the reasons that successive governments seem to favour having the influx of cheaper migrants into our workforce, which I think has a huge contributing factor to wage compression, and again, is sort of a deterrence for people going to work, is that actually, if that didn't happen, the results could be quite inflationary. We kind of saw this during the pandemic, didn't we? Where all of a sudden, when people went back to their countries of origin, we suddenly had no lorry drivers. Companies were offering, 95k, 100k a year to drive a lorry. The wages shot up. Is that a sort of valid argument that actually, if we didn't have this sort of slightly stagnated system, we could instead be looking at wage inflation, which would then contribute to inflation proper?
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. I don't really believe in the wage price spiral as a monetarist. I think that the inflation we had over the last few years is overwhelmingly due to the amount of money that was printed, or the quantitative easing that was carried out. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I think the very large amount of inward migration we've had in recent years is partly a reflection of the fact that we've got people, particularly under the age of 35, are just not working for the reasons we've already discussed. So, there has been a lot of demand for labour, but we haven't been able to fulfil it ourselves with the kind of native-born population. So these two things absolutely are connected, immigration and having a lot of people out of the workforce, but this is clearly not a sustainable situation. We can't carry on with 6 million or more people of working age on out-of-work benefits, most of whom now are not on unemployment benefit, they're on some form of sickness benefit, and trying to make up for that by just having very, very large amounts of immigration, which is unpopular for all sorts of different reasons. So look, we have a lot of people in this country who really, in practice, can work. The important thing is to try and distinguish between the people who are ready to go back to work or will soon be ready to go back to work, and those who genuinely can never go back to work. We need to be compassionate towards those people and make sure that they have a decent standard of living, while ultimately, we're looking to help a lot of people here. This is not just a matter of cracking down on benefit fraud, although I'm sure there is plenty of that. It's not in the interests of a lot of these people to stay on long-term sick for the rest of their lives.
I think one thing that's sort of changed in, let's say, the last decade is, if I was off work a decade ago, not that I've ever been off work, but there wouldn't be much to do. You'd be sort of staring at the four walls of your house, feeling quite sorry for yourself. But I think these days there is so much at people's fingertips to keep them entertained. Gazillion box sets they can watch, mobile phone handsets that people can just sit and, scroll for hours and hours on end, that actually it can sort of become a lifestyle choice. If you've got people on, especially if you're a younger person, you think, if I go out, I'm not really going to be earning much money. I've got to start off at the bottom of the ladder and do a job I don't really like. They'd all rather sit at home and try and become YouTubers. I mean, the problem is we've got to sort of address some of the cultural issues behind this as well, and I'm not quite sure how we do that.
Well, I'm not too sure. I hear what you're saying, but, try it for a few weeks and see how quickly you get bored. I think one of the reasons that so many of these people are suffering from mental illnesses and depression and so on is actually the boredom and kind of futility of life out of work. This is why I say, it's in the best interests of very many of these people to be encouraged to get back to work. It's very easy to get stuck in a rut when you're unemployed, and it's not helping your mental health problems, it's making them worse.
Yeah, I totally agree. Work is good for the soul, and I like your Prince William beard there, Chris.
Thank you.
Nice new addition. Right, Chris Snowdon, ladies and gentlemen. Let's